Hello, welcome to Diary of a Creator. So, today I wanted to chat about one of the key tricksters of the ego mind that you need to be aware of, because if you move forward with this, you will create what you don't want. And this is a surefire way to do it. And this is what is called a negative vision, which, if we are not conscious, this is exactly what we would do, because this is how our human mind is framed. And a negative vision is creating a vision based on what you don't want. So it is getting away from something you don't want. So if you continuing with the theme of me wanting to break free of corporate, build a business, and all of that, a lot of that vision initially, in the way I tackled it, was a negative vision. And I didn't really realize that. Why was it a negative vision? Because what I did was, my main focus point was, I need to get out of corporate. I need to get out of the 9 to 5. And then I created options around that. That's a negative vision, because my focus is on what I do not want. It is not on what I wanted. I didn't sit and create what I wanted and then come to the realization that the corporate 9 to 5 didn't fit it. I did it the opposite way. I don't want to be here, so I need to be here. So common. And honestly, if you're not conscious, you will do that, because it is the human mind's natural tendency to do that. And literally every single client I've ever had, when I come to ask them what they do not want, what they want to change, they will give me paragraphs of detail. Flip it, and I go to ask them what they do want, and I have to probe. I have to keep digging and going into questions, because it is not our natural mind's processing way to language what we want. It's actually very difficult. And that, honestly, when it comes to creating a life that you truly want, that is where you have to start. You have to park what you don't want. That is irregardless. That's just your current reality. Your current reality can change. But you need to take all of that out of the frame and focus in on what you actually want. So, taking away the conditional language of, oh, but I must have that, I need to, park it. This is about using imagination, intuition, and honestly, just what do you want in a perfect world? If I had a magic wand, what would you want your life to be? Answer that question, because that is going to start to get you to where you want, but really spend time on that. But I wanted to give a few examples of negative visions, so you have a little bit more meat to be able to pick if you are really where you're doing this, because you will be doing it in different ways. I have been doing it more than I realized as well. And that business example is really just one of them. I have changed locations based on negative visions of escaping. I want to get out of here, so I'm just going to go here because I have nowhere else to really think about that. But some examples, right? I've already used the, I hate corporate, I'm going to get out, I'm going to build my own business for freedom, and kind of moving through that process, only to realize that through the creation of the business, I felt less free and more trapped than I did in corporate. And so I'm going through a full overhaul and shift out of how I do what I do. Another one, I hate being alone, so I'm going to go and find a relationship. Now, this is a very common one, but unfortunately, it is a negative vision, because you are not actually setting the relationship you want first. You're escaping being alone, which actually naturally means you're going to find a relationship that doesn't fit, because you're coming from a place of lack and scarcity. And for someone that is moving into a relationship to not feel alone, will end up actually mimicking the feeling of being alone even when they're in a relationship, because they're trying to seek what they feel they are lacking in another person, which is not going to give them the relationship and the intimacy that they're after. It's actually going to draw in people that are going to fulfill that belief. which is a tricky one, which is why, I mean, it's very, very common. There's a lot of trauma bonds going on in the world where it's because of this. People are seeking from a negative vision, a place of lack, and then they're trying to fill it rather than setting what they want and moving that way. Another one, growing up in poverty. And so a person who grows up in poverty sets out to never be in poverty ever again. I'm never going to end up like my family. So I'm going to go and be rich. I'm going to earn a lot of money. I'm going to be very successful. On the outside, this would be a celebrated person. This is a person who would be celebrated for overcoming adversity. Underneath this pattern, it is a negative vision, pure and pure. It is driven by a fear of never having enough. It is driven by a fear of being in poverty, of scarcity. And just because on the outset the person has gone and done the opposite, they've generated a lot of money, a lot of success, underneath, they are never going to feel like they have enough. They could keep going and going and going and be the richest person in the world, but they won't ever shake that feeling. Why? Because they've created a negative vision. A negative vision is in resistance. So what we resist will persist. If you are focused on avoiding a feeling from a situation and creating what you feel to be the opposite, you will not get rid of the feeling. So in the same way as you create something to feel like it will fulfill you, but you have created it because you're in an unfulfilling situation and you want to get out, you will not create it that way. You will actually create something and then you're going to go straight back to feeling unfulfilled again. In much the same way as with the poverty mindset, if you have created your desire for wealth out of a lack mentality that you don't want to be in poverty, even when you're rich, you're going to feel like you're in poverty. And this is the trick. Another common one is weight. The diet industry, the fitness industry. If you think of a problem of I'm overweight and I'm going to go on a diet, one of the biggest negative visions you can create because you're focused on what you don't want. And again, when you think of the success rates of diets, generally they're only about 10% that can keep the weight off long term. And this is the very core reason why, is because it's in a negative vision. It's trying to escape the feelings of being overweight with losing weight. But unfortunately, the feelings are going to carry over, which is what ultimately leads people to go back in. And a lot of this you'll hear it a lot where people grow up overweight as children and then they are small, but they won't ever shake the feeling that they are overweight. And it can also happen in this space that people will flip from overweight to very underweight because they change the focus, but inside they feel exactly the same. And so where this is really getting is a lot of people will try and change the outside circumstances to answer what they're really truly wanting. The outside circumstance might change, but they're not getting what they want because it's a negative vision. It's only going to bring them more of what they don't want to feel, which is why it is so important to create what you want. Because if you focus on the problem and what you don't, you will bring that feeling with you. This is a big one. So I would recommend that you spend time answering that question. If you could wave a magic wand, what would your life look like? What would it be like? What would you feel like? What would you do? And sit in the imagination of that and just push it. Take your current reality out. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what you are. Who would you want to be? That is how we start creating what is true for us and what feels good and fulfilling and free and all of the good stuff.